In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful, all praise is due to our Creator, our Cherisher, our Nourisher, and our Sustainer. We bear witness there's none worthy of worship but Allah. We bear witness, we believe in all the prophets who came throughout history in the line of divine, and we bear witness that Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa ashabihi wa sallam, is the final of all the emissaries of Allah. Respected Huffaz, A'imma, Qurra, elders, brothers and sisters, respected youth, I greet you with the Islamic universal greeting of peace. May the peace, the mercy and the blessings of Allah be upon each and everyone present here at this auspicious hour of Jum'ah on this last Friday of Ramadan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. We are in the last days of Ramadan, the third Ramadan through a global pandemic, and we have lost loved ones in the process. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant them Jannah and Maghfirah. And those who are ill, may Allah grant them a recovery, inshaAllah. And may Allah keep us protected from the remnants and the hardship of the COVID-19 and other ailments, inshaAllah. Nonetheless, the spirit of Ramadan and the spirit of the fasting month in particular of Ramadan, it continues. The spirit of Ramadan is a spirit of a month of fasting that is also a spirit of introspection. It is also an expression of our mental determination. It's also a physical manifestation of an internal spiritual commitment. It is also an exercise in patient perseverance, and it inculcates within us a practice of selfless generosity. To take each one of these, the spirit of introspection, of muhasabah. It requires sincerity, ikhlas. It requires humility, tawadu'. It requires acknowledgement of our shortcomings as human beings, al-i'tiraf bil-akhta'. It also motivates us towards an intention to change, irada fi at-taghyir, and also al-raghba lit-tahsin, a desire to improve on our shortcomings. As an expression of mental determination, it requires of us an intention which is genuine. Ikhlas niyyah, sincerity of intention. And therefore, in the Hadith al-Qudsi, Allah inspires the Prophet to say, كل عمل ابن آدم له. All activities and actions of the son of Adam, in other words, of a human being, is for him. إلا الصيام, except fasting. فإنه لي وأنا أجزي به. Because fasting is for me and I shall personally reward. As a physical manifestation of a spiritual commitment, it demands that that genuine intention be expressed through physically abstaining from food and drink and intimacy during the fasting period. And we have to face down our appetite, our daily appetite for food and drink, as this food and drink, this hunger and thirst, gnaws at our appetites, all other appetites and desires and wants. In overcoming what seems like an insatiable desire to eat, we come to realize that other desires that seemingly demand to be answered now can in fact be postponed. We come to realize we can do without certain things. We can delay certain things. We can control the things that seek to control us. But our fasting is more than the abstention from food and drink. As the Rasul said, مَنْ لَمْ يَدَعَ قَوْلَ الزُّورِ وَعَمِلَ بِهِ فَلَيْسَ لِلَّهِ حَاجَةٌ أَنْ يَدَعَ طَعَامَهُ وَشَرَابَهُ. Whoever does not give up false statements, telling lies, evil deeds, speaking bad words, Allah is not in need of such a person giving up food and drink. In other words, it's different levels of abstention. Not only from food and drink, but also spiritually and morally to abstain from wrong to the best of our ability. We therefore realize that Islam has emphasized the institution of fasting as a highly spiritual and moral discipline, both in motive and in form. In motive, it always demands, like all other actions, purity of intention, genuineness in our motives, and honesty of purpose. And in form, in practicality, it demands abstaining from engaging in that which is unlawful, and thus disciplining the self. Though you are able to do it, you restrict yourself from not doing it. With discipline comes true control and real inner power. The power to free oneself from the shackles of the base tendencies within ourselves, whether it be appetites or whether it be emotions. As an exercise in patient perseverance, fasting demands control of the self, and even not controlling ourselves only from food and drink again, but also from all forms of negativity. Besides not lying and cheating, and also how we react and respond to the challenges and the realities we face. And therefore, the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in a hadith documented in Sahih of Imam Muslim said, فَإِذَا كَانَ يَوْمُ صَوْمِ أَحَدِكُمْ فَلَا يَرْفُثْ يَوْمَئِذْ وَلَا يَصْخَبْ فَإِنْ سَابَّهُ أَحَدٌ أَوْ قَاتَلَهُ فَلْيَقُلْ إِنِّي امْرَأٌ صَائِمٌ. I am a person fasting. Say that as a response to a person who is trying to undermine you or indulge you in some obscenity or trying to raise a quarrel or an argument with you. Say, Ana Sa'im, I am of those fasting. So not only controlling the self in our own choice of actions, but also in response to people who may be negative. The patient self-restraint built by fasting from food and drink becomes an aid in keeping our priorities in order. How you say, what you eat, what you eat and when you eat. How you eat, what you eat. How you acquire what you acquire. Why you do what you do. All of these should become prioritized, helping us to get a better grip on the constant battle between short-term pleasures and long-term goals. It is a concrete practice that helps us to prioritize our wants over our needs. Prioritize our wants over our needs. But it's supposed to be that our needs should get priority over our wants. Because we want, there's enough always to meet our basic needs, but there's never sufficient to meet our greed. And that's very important, that our needs and our wants need to be prioritized. Prioritize our needs and what is important over our wants. And that will help that fundamental element within ourselves, that indefinable dimension of ourselves, which we call character, which the Prophet ﷺ came to reform and perfect, as he said in the hadith, documented by Sahih Muslim, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I have come to improve human character and human behavior. As for inculcating a spirit of selfless generosity, we are more aware of the hunger of the poor and the suffering of the oppressed during this period. And we are instructed to be more generous. The word is more. It doesn't mean only in this period, but more generous in this month. In fact, to the extent we cannot even celebrate Eid al-Fitr for those who can afford, cannot even celebrate Eid al-Fitr unless we have disbursed our Sadaqatul Fitr to ensure that someone somewhere has benefited from what we have at our disposal even before we can celebrate. And some say even the fast of the fasting person hovers between heavens and earth until that charity is given. But the charity is an indication of our social consciousness, that even before we celebrate ourselves, someone somewhere must have seen his need or her need met. So, fasting fosters a sense of solidarity. Solidarity with the needy, which are often forgotten. And by experiencing temporary hunger ourselves, we may feel more sympathy for those who experience such pangs of hunger and thirst on a regular basis. As we say, we know exactly the menu we are going to have for iftar tonight, and what we are going to eat and what we will not be eating. And there are many people for whom iftar never comes. The life of a believer demands of him to be one who feels for the struggle and the pains of the needy and the destitute. But that empathy which we feel mustn't become an end in itself. I mentioned before, we are feeding people in Ramadan. And we feed, alhamdulillah, especially the Muslim community, it's tremendous effort. The problem is, after Ramadan, who feeds the people? It's very good to give in Ramadan and to give more in Ramadan. Secondly, we keep on feeding the same people. What have we done as a collective community to move from feeding the poor and hungry, which we need to do, but when are we going to move from feeding the hungry to moving to eradicating poverty and hunger as a whole? What can we do as a collectivity with all the organizations and institutions? People are going to cook for Eid night, mashallah. More and more people are cooking for less and less people. What about the people who you feed today who after Eid will not have food? Allah will ask us about that. He won't say, well, you were generous in Ramadan because you got more reward in Ramadan. You don't just do it for the reward. مَن يَعْبُدُ اللَّهَ رَغَبَةً فَتِلْكَ عِبَادَ التُّجَّارِ. Sayyidina Ali said, if you worship Allah only because of desire for reward, that's the worship of a businessman. What if Allah gives you no reward? Wouldn't you do it? So yes, we must feed the poor, and please, I'm encouraging that. I'm saying, what are we doing the day after Eid? The week after Eid? What do we do for those people whom fasting is a daily reality? For whom iftar is not the daily reality? The life of a believer therefore revolves around iman and amalu salihat. Not only an internal faith, but an active implementation of the principles and values of that faith. Iman and amalu salihat. Nothing is combined in the Quran more than that. Alladhina amanu wa amilu salihat. And by virtue of that combination of iman and amal, a believer has no option but to be a catalyst for goodness anywhere in any situation. And therefore, the believer has no option but to be an activist. As we emerge from a night among the nights of Laylatul Qadr last night, today is International Quds Day. We are in full solidarity with the struggle for peace and justice in Palestine. In fact, the very continued existence of the Palestinians is a symbol of their resistance. Their very continued existence is a symbol of their resilience and of their resistance. We are in full solidarity with the struggle for justice in Palestine. People who are victims of a war waged against an innocent civilian population, indigenous to the land, the confiscation of their homes, displacement of their people, destruction of their property, and decimation of their population. Last Ramadan was Quds Day. This Ramadan is Quds Day. Next Ramadan will also be Quds Day. What will motivate us as individuals and as a collectivity, as an ummah? Don't worry about the leadership. Don't worry about the leadership. They have sold out a long time ago. They have sold out to other interests. They are not serving even their own people, even politically, forget religiously. We are aware of the struggle of people in Kashmir under brutal Indian domination. And the Indian authorities have increasingly become anti-Islamic and brutally and openly anti-Muslim. We are in solidarity of the Muslims and the oppressed who are victims of the bigoted BJP leadership and their thugs. We are aware of the plight of the Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar, in Burma, who have been described by the United Nations as the world's most persecuted people. Muslims, our brothers. Remember two things. Prophet said, مثل المؤمنين في توادهم وتراحمهم وتعاطفهم كمثل الجسد. The believers in their relationship with one another, in their feeling for one another, and compassion for one another is like one body. إذ اشتكى منه عضو تداعى له سائر الجسد بالسهر والحمى. I think you must have memorized this hadith by now. If any part of the body is afflicted, the rest of the body suffers the pain. We're not even putting a bandage or taking even a tablet for it. We just speak about it. Nothing gets done. Increasingly people are being attacked. Increasingly people are being humiliated. Something needs to be done. We are as-saihun. Ramadan is the month of the fasting, as-saihun, moving on a journey. When are we going to move on a journey to eradicate poverty and hunger? When are we going to move on a journey to liberate Al-Quds? We are aware of the ongoing strife in the region of Sham, and where the richest countries in the world, Arab countries, are fighting the poorest Muslim country, Yemen. A bloody war, which is the scene of what the United Nations has declared the world's largest humanitarian crisis. It doesn't even make the news. We are indeed in empathy and solidarity with those who are innocent victims of the war in Sham and in Yemen. We know of the Chinese internment camps as we stand here in Xinjiang region, where over 1 million Uyghur Muslims are being incarcerated and punished, and their fault is that they have either Muslim roots or Muslim names or some link to Islam. They are being kept apart from their families. Their children are tortured and made to forget their identity and denounce their religion. We are well aware of the cruel realities faced by these Muslims in these parts of the world. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, grant us the courage of our conviction to be at least a voice of conscience. من رأى منكم منكرا فليغيره بيده فإن لم يستطع فبلسانه فإن لم يستطع فبقلبه وذلك أضعف الإيمان. When you observe or come to hear or are aware of anything that is wrong and injustice, specifically against people, then change it physically. This is the first step. If you cannot do that, then at least speak out against it. And if you cannot speak out, at least hate it, dislike the wrong that you are witnessing, at least dislike it in your heart. You cannot be indifferent. And that is the lowest expression of faith. Therefore, we recall the supplication of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, also documented in the Sahih of Imam Muslim. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-hammi wal-huzni wal-'ajzi wal-kasli wal-bukhl wal-jubni wa dala'i ad-dayni wa ghalabati ar-rijal. Oh Allah, I seek refuge in you from the anxiety. Many of us suffer anxiety and stress nowadays. That's what the Rasul asked for. Anxiety, from grief, from incapacity, from inability to do something, from laziness, from selfishness, from cowardliness, from the burden of debt, and from being under the domination of other people. We cannot be going through Ramadan with all our attempts at a heightened level of spiritual consciousness and recalibrating our morals through our siyam and qiyam without being concerned about the suffering of those who are desperate. من سمع مناديا ينادي يا للمسلم فلن يجبه فليس بمسلم. Whoever hears the call, whether it be a Muslim or a non-Muslim, when you hear a call of someone in distress, when you hear the call of anyone, Muslim or Kafir, whatever it may be, anyone, من سمع مناديا ينادي يا للمسلم, and they call out, oh Muslims, you know your religion says justice and so on. من سمع مناديا ينادي, when you hear someone calling out, oh Muslim, and here half the Muslim world population is in this situation. It's not them or someone else, it's our own. Whoever hears the call of exasperation, of desperation from anyone, and and you hear it and don't respond, فَلَمْ يَجِبُوا فَلَيْسَ بِمُسْلِمٍ. You don't consider yourself a Muslim. We cannot go through Ramadan to Ramadan with all our attempts at heightened level of spiritual consciousness and recalibrating our morals through our siyam and qiyam, which we ought to do, without being concerned about the suffering of those who are desperate. And Sadaqatul Fitr is a reminder of that. We read the Quran, we made khatam, we made tahajjud, we made siyam, we made qiyam, we made all of those things. And now we must remember Sadaqatul Fitr. It must be paid before the Imam gets on the mimbar. Why can't they give it afterwards? Why can't they give Sadaqatul Fitr on Eid day? Why not? It's Eid. No, before you celebrate, you thought of someone else. Now you come to mosque. That kind of consciousness should make us aware. How do we celebrate Eid? How do we say we have reformed ourselves, improved ourselves, elevated ourselves? In which way, in what way? Without being concerned about the rest of the body of the ummah, which are experiencing the hardships and difficulties which they are experiencing. We cannot expect to achieve new goals or move beyond our present circumstances unless we change for the better. Nor can we become what we need to be or achieve what we want to achieve by remaining where we are. Every Muslim, having experienced this month of fasting, this month of siyam, of qiyam, of ghufran, of furqan, should be ready to face the year that lies ahead with a renewed strength, with a renewed commitment, with dedicated fervor, with an enthusiastic zeal, with greater resolve for a universal goodwill. Remembering that as Muslims who are trying to be mu'min, al-Muslimu man salim al-Muslimuna min lisanihi wa yadihi. A Muslim, Prophet defines, is that person from whose words and deeds other Muslims are safe. Today we're not even safe from Muslims. Most of the tweets you get is ulama from Muslim attacking other ulama from Muslims. Forget Muslims attacking Muslim. Where are we? We're retrogressing. If a definition of Muslim according to this authentic hadith of Rasulullah, al-Muslimu man salim al-Muslimuna min lisani, the ordinary Muslim, forget the Shaikh and the Alim and the Qari and all that, the ordinary man in the street, or the lady in the street, al-Muslimu man salim al-Muslimuna min lisani wa yadi. A Muslim is one from whose words and deeds other Muslims are safe. Then who's a Muslim today? Wal-Mu'min man aminahu nas ala dima'ihim wa amwalihim wa anfusihim. And a mu'min is one in whom, not Muslims, in whom humanity at large finds safety and security regarding their honor, their dignity and their property. This Ramadan, let us move from being Muslim towards being mu'min. Let us ensure that at least we are Muslim by the definition of the Rasul. May Allah grant that our hearts be filled with love and affection. Do what is best. Let's take the purpose of our fasting and the prioritization of what is important. And in our own level, Allah won't ask us about others. Allah will ask you about yourself. But do remember, Allah will not change anything for us unless we change it ourselves. اتقوا الله ولتنظر نفس ما قدمت لغد واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون. Because why? إن الله لا يغير ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم. Allah will not change the condition of any people. It's a promise from Allah. You can make all the dua you want to, unless you change what is within yourself. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our fast, forgive us our shortcomings, motivate us to greater heights. We become instruments of goodness, not for Muslims, but for all of humanity, for all of creation, inshallah. And may we come out of Ramadan better than we have entered. Shukran. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.